Welcome to today's Software AG webcast titled, How to Build Better Business Apps, Market Trends, Insights, and Recommendations. My name is Will Carter, your webinar host. Before we start today's webcast, I would like to briefly introduce Software AG. The digital transformation continues to change enterprise IT landscapes from inflexible application silos to modern digital platform-driven IT architectures which can deliver the openness, speed, and agility needed to enable real-time digital enterprises. Software AG offers the first end-to-end digital business platform based on open standards with integration, process management, adaptive application development, real-time analytics, and enterprise architecture management as core building blocks to help customers build their digital futures today. With over 45 years of customer-centric innovation, Software AG is ranked as a leader in many innovative and digital technology categories. Software AG has more than 4,300 employees, is active in 70 countries, and had revenues of €873 million in 2015. It is now my pleasure to introduce Thomas Stoesser, Senior Director of Product Marketing, Process, and Operational Intelligence. Thomas.
Perfect. Thanks, Will. So, my name is Thomas. I run product marketing for Agile Process and Operational Intelligence at Software AG. That means I look at the portfolio that has to do with process management, task management, work coordination systems, case management, and sort of all the technologies related to build such applications. So I'm going to be running the interview today. My guest today is Neil Ward Dutton, and before I try to introduce him, I think I would like to give the word over to him because he obviously can do the best job at explaining who he is and what he does. Neil, over to you.
Thanks very much, Thomas. It's a pleasure to be here. So, yes, I'm Neil Ward Dutton. I'm the research director at a boutique industry research and consulting firm. We're based in the UK. I'm working largely in Europe. And our research kind of agenda, if you like, is about showing how digital technology changes work. So I've been doing this for about 10 years, and really what that involves is really looking at how new technologies are changing the working environment in companies and in organizations more generally, specifically around how people coordinate their work, get their work done, how they make decisions, how knowledge is managed and shared. And we're seeing, of course, whether it's cloud computing, mobile, social, big data, analytics, all of these things are really changing that landscape in terms of the platforms, the processes, the habits, and the cultures that exist in organizations. So my job is to really try and set that research agenda, make sure that I understand where all the technology is going, and equally really understand how organizations are actually using this stuff. Because for us, our research and our consulting isn't just about where the technology is going, but actually also about what is it that makes companies actually successful with this. Because for sure, it's not just about buying technology and installing it or putting a credit card into a website. There's a lot of change involved. So that's me, and that's what I do.
Excellent. Thanks, Neil. Yeah, and I fully agree with you. It should be much, much more than just buying technology and installing it. I mean, this is one of the main reasons why we're having the conversation today. So really today I want to dive a little bit into the topic of how to build better business apps with you. And sort of the leading question that I've prepared here is sort of one that should sort of help set the background a little bit. I mean, I know from conversations with you that you speak to lots of clients, you speak to lots of vendors, you also speak to lots of other analysts. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit what kind of high-level trends you're actually seeing right now in the market from all these conversations regarding how change is managed, how innovation gets delivered, and basically how people approach this new era of modern business application development.
Okay, great. Well, I guess there's a few things, but I'll start by just explaining what we see at the highest level, and then we'll dig into that a bit. So the first thing that's important to say, I think, Thomas, is that in the work that we do across sectors, so this is in the public sector, in government, but also in areas as diverse as retail, utilities, leisure, consumer goods, travel and transport, financial services. We're seeing at a high level many things in common. And the two that always come up, first, customer experience, and second, innovation. And I don't mean necessarily they're always in that order, but they're the two things that people always want to talk about. How can we create new ways to engage with our customers or our citizens more effectively across a wide variety of channels, because their expectations are changing and we need to be more responsive, we need to be more transparent, we need to provide better service because we can't compete just on a product or a price. So that's one. And the other is, how can we get new ideas into our organization and drive out improvements, drive new outcomes in our market through those ideas? So, you know, how can we create an innovation program? Or how can we kind of reinvent our existing innovation or research work? So those are the things that just come up again and again and again. And of course, they're also related. You know, often a lot of what drives that innovation urge is this desire to be faster, be more flexible, be more agile in a very fast-changing environment. So, you know, whether you're looking at financial services or telco, retail, insurance, whatever it might be, we're seeing new digital native competitors coming in with no legacy and just being able to very, very quickly create new products and service propositions. We're seeing people coming from out of industry and competing in new sectors. So we're seeing, for example, retailers providing financial services. We're seeing telecoms operators providing insurance. And that's not even insurance for your phone, but actually insurance for your car. We're seeing all kinds of kind of quite significant disruptions in industry. So these two ideas of innovation and customer experience are very much linked. So let's go one level deeper. What are the trends that we're seeing in terms of how people try and manage change and deliver innovation? Well, firstly, we're seeing smart organizations thinking more broadly about innovation, not just having a kind of backroom research team that may be focused on product and kind of had some really smart people in a closed room thinking about product. We're seeing much more open approaches to innovation. We're seeing much more variation in the approaches. So really progressive companies, yes, they still have those internal teams, but they also, for example, tend to partner much more to try and drive innovation. And they may partner with other commercial companies, startups, for example. They may partner with universities. They may actually do some corporate investing. They may have kind of hackathons or drive competitions with groups of startups to create new ideas and then bring those innovations in and drive products out. So we're seeing innovation in a more kind of distributed, more open way. And that has some really interesting implications because if we go back a few years, organizations typically had, even in innovation, which you might think is a very open and creative kind of discipline, they actually had a lot of structure and a lot of kind of planned, essentially a very, very kind of planned and predetermined pipeline for how things got done. And it was possible to really control that agenda, and not always with great outcomes, right? So what we're seeing as innovation becomes more open, as it becomes more about partnerships and collaboration, we're seeing that it's much less predictable where new ideas are going to come from. It's much less predictable which innovations or which ideas might succeed or might fail. When ideas do succeed, it's more difficult to control them, to manage them effectively. So fundamentally what this means for tools and for platforms, Thomas, is the more sophisticated organizations realize they need platforms that enable them to behave in new ways. So this is where we get into the real meat of your question. They're looking for platforms that allow them to test, learn, experiment, gather real insight in a closed loop fashion. And they need practices built around that. So They want to be able to build stuff really quickly, test it really quickly, scale it really quickly, and learn from it very quickly. Okay, and that's for a whole range of reasons. And so you see organizations managing a portfolio of ideas and trying to drive platforms that enable them to rapidly explore that space. And that's quite different from how actually organizations used to manage this just a few years ago.
Okay, so you're touching there on new ways how change and innovation is being delivered, sort of how new applications are being built. You also touched on, the audiences for those changing a little bit, or at least the expectations of these audiences changing. So what, from your point of view, would you say are key capabilities that clients need to look out for today to support such new requirements when it comes to build better business apps? Yeah,
well, there's actually a number of different angles, and please do stop me because I have a tendency to talk for a long time about these things. So do come back with further questions and stop me if I'm talking too long. There's a few things that come out, I think. One is really platforms that are managed in some sense, and that's a bit abstract. But I mean, we see organizations that use kind of platform as a service capabilities. So they may be completely public PaaS propositions. They may be more kind of dedicated, for example, but still platforms that are managed where you don't have to take responsibility for running and managing the low-level infrastructure underneath the platform. Those things, those I think those kinds of platforms have absolutely just demonstrable value because they just remove a whole load of concerns that you may otherwise have to deal with. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they need to enable to build apps quickly that will work across a variety of different devices and essentially channels. So can that platform enable you to build an app that will deliver a good experience on a regular kind of web browser on a laptop or something like that? Will they enable you to work on a tablet? Will they enable you to work on a mobile? Will you be able to present APIs to the outside world so that you can actually have other things constructed around that? So that's another thing, is that kind of open experience piece for the user. The third thing is, if you come back to the point I was making earlier about our agenda around how organizations are learning about new ways to coordinate their work. This is another really, really important part that I think some organizations forget, is that, and I'm going to have to back up a bit to really explain this one. Often when we see people kind of diving into the whole digital transformation piece, and they think about customer experiences, they tend to fixate on the very kind of front edge, if you like, of the organization. So how can we reinvigorate our website? How can we deliver a new mobile app? And you know what, that's fine, and that's good. And it makes sense because often that's where the real pain is being felt in terms of, your ability to keep up with competitors. But what I always tell people who have that kind of mindset is, look, this is fine, but what you're essentially doing, if you only focus on that, is you're making more elaborate, sophisticated promises to your customers and your stakeholders. That's fine in itself, but unless you can deliver on those promises, you're not really going to be actually moving the needle. And in fact, you may end up making things worse, because for sure, everything you do in your company is connected together, and more so than ever. So it's not only about the work you do in marketing to make new propositions. You have to be able to back that up with the right kind of sales approach, the right kind of sales tools. You have to be able to back that up with the right kinds of operations, and you have to be able to back that up with the right kind of customer service. And unless those things are all aligned, ultimately you won't be delivering the experience that you really want to deliver. So what we need in these platforms is a way to manage work and coordinate work, because it's not only about the front end, it's not only about the screen, it's about how can we make sure that we never drop the ball when somebody requests a new account online or when they ask to change their address. We need to make sure that it's not just about the apps, it's about the work that the apps create inside your organization. how can we manage that work, share that knowledge effectively? Because
almost like addressing a work life cycle. Is that maybe a way to put it?
Exactly right. Yeah, because it's not just about, if we just create new front-end apps, then those apps are going to create demand inside your organization to fulfill services, to solve problems, to do all those things. And unless we actually join all those dots with some kind of platform that allows us to manage work and coordinate work, and do that in a very flexible, agile way, we're not really going to solve, we're not going to address the issue fundamentally. We're really just going to be painting new pictures for people, which is not enough. So those platforms need to have a first-class understanding of work and how it happens in an organization. So the ability to create tasks, to share tasks, to direct work, to share work across teams, and to do that in flexible ways. So not necessarily in the old-fashioned way we might have thought of BPM, where essentially we had a model which absolutely kind of set a very firm path and said, okay, you always have to follow this path when you're doing this work. We have to be more creative because actually we want to serve customers in ways they want to be served. So we need more flexible, agile approaches to the way we coordinate that work. But nevertheless, it needs to be there. We can't just let it be assumed that teams and people and systems will all work hand in hand effectively without some kind of platform to tie everything together. It won't happen by accident, right? So,
interesting, yeah. Yep.
And the very last piece, which ties it all together, is we need platforms that allow us to measure. You know, that this whole digital transformation thing is essentially fundamentally enabled by and powered by data. Insights about what's working, what's not working, what can we improve. So, you know, if we're building on platforms that are hosted so we can move fast and scale fast, they enable us to be creative in terms of how we're dealing with the work that comes out of new experiences. If they allow us to work across different channels, then, wow, you know what? Wouldn't it be great if we could actually understand how those things are working in the real world? Which things are going well, which things are not going well? Where can we improve? That is an absolute imperative, and it's something that is so often not thought about properly. It's not enough to just build experiences and then let them kind of be used in the operational environment. We have to have platforms now that are properly instrumented, so we can measure how people are working with these things and where our opportunities for improvement are, because it's only then that we really get the transformation.
Yep, I couldn't agree more, and I have to say that you know, I oftentimes also see from talking to customers and prospects that measurement, unfortunately, still oftentimes is sort of looked at as an afterthought and not something which is, you know, considered as a first-class citizen when the requirements for a more sophisticated business application are formulated. So I think that's a very good point. I just want to stress that one more time. Now, one other thing that just occurred to me was that while you were describing these different capabilities, which you think are key, you also referred to a platform. Now, when I hear platform, I usually think about an integrated set of capabilities in, you know, one common construct, the construct being the platform. So why were you stressing so much on a platform? What do you think are the benefits of going for such an integrated platform?
Yeah. So, you know what, that is actually not necessarily as simple a question as we might think it is, because for sure there are ways for organizations to assemble these things themselves, right? There are lots of different point products and tools that enable you to address part of this this puzzle. And you know, some organizations do essentially assemble their own platform by integrating lots of different tools. The challenge is that, in my experience, there are really relatively few organizations that have the luxury of being able to do that. And this is not about, it's not really about skill. or about talent or about budget even. It's actually about sophistication of mindset. It's the same kind of sophistication of mindset that leads people to think about cloud in the first place. It's like, well, should we really be in the business of doing this? Or actually, is the outcome we want just more innovation? Do we actually just want results quicker so we can uncover new opportunities faster? Are we ourselves, you know, as a retailer, for example, are we in the platform business? Should we be doing this? And I think there's a sophistication of mindset that says, actually, you know what? We really shouldn't be in this business. And actually, by having an integrated platform, we give ourselves the opportunity to move faster and with less risk. So, you know, it's always tempting in a fast-moving technology area where there's lots of new, exciting stuff going on. It's always tempting to let technology, just for technology's sake almost, to lead the conversation. But actually, what I find so interesting about what we're going through at the moment in the industry is that it really is very much business-led, and it has to be business-led. You know, I talked earlier on, Thomas, about the nature of innovation and how that's changing. That is all being driven. It's not being driven by technology departments in the main. It's being driven by commercial groups. You know, it's being driven by you know, product teams. It's being driven by proposition and marketing teams. It's being driven by strategy teams. So, you know, these people, there's by you know, embracing this more open approach to innovation, we need to have propositions that enable us to really move quickly, and that means, you know what, it's kind of like, I don't know if you know about this, Thomas, but apparently President Obama is famous for, well, he's famous for many things, but one of the things is he tends to wear the same thing every day. And he wears a suit that's very similar, he wears a tie that's very similar, and apparently the reason is that it just means that's a whole class of decisions he doesn't have to make. And you know what? It's similar here, right? So let's just take some decisions off the table. Let's, yes, constrain ourselves, but actually constraints are good because constraints enable us to make more decisions of the right kind quicker. So if we essentially go for this proposition, integrated platform proposition, we get something that enables us to just be quicker, to move faster, to focus on the decisions that actually need to be made from a business perspective. And
right.
That's fundamentally what it's about. I think it's about this, it's a more sophisticated mindset that leads to that kind of approach, in my
So
view.
basically reducing complexity and enabling or freeing up more time on sort of the core of the subject matter that you're trying to address rather than the means of how you're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you probably put it more eloquently than I did. It's about removing distractions. It's about allowing you to focus more of your time, effort, money, energy, and creativity on really delivering business results.
Right, right. Of course, there's always like a third option, right? There's the option of let's buy best-of-breed technologies and integrate them yourself to build your own platform, basically. The second option is to you know, go for an integrated platform from the start. And a third option that we also see quite often is, well, you know, we have 200 Java developers in our organization, so we'll just build everything ourselves. You know, you would think that in the year 2016, this doesn't come up that often anymore. But surprisingly, it still does. So, from your point of view, you know, is that a feasible approach? Is that a reasonable approach, or do you see, you know, other challenges and risks associated with the approach of, oh, we'll just do it ourselves?
Well, at the risk of probably making some people upset, I would say that, you know, you're kind of crazy if you do that. You know, I do know, I don't know if it's the same organizations that you know, Thomas, but I have come across a few who absolutely will take that DIY approach. And for me, the only possible reason you would do that is if you have approximating an infinite amount of resource, right? If you have so much resource in terms of skilled Java developers who are already budgeted for some other reason, and you can just afford to throw them at the problem. You know, if you are if you are, I don't know, Netflix or someone like that, or eBay, then I think there's justification in some parts of your business for doing that. Yeah, because essentially, you know, you are a digital business. Core, you know, some of your core product capability is kind of the DNA of it is woven into the way that you run your business, right? But even then, for a company like eBay, Netflix, whoever else it might be, I would contend that there's a whole heap of use cases where they shouldn't be applying that approach. Yes, you know, for some of the really core innovations that drive the intelligence, for example, around how recommendations get made, or some of those things, yes, absolutely. But if actually what they want to do is to make some of their salespeople more effective, or they want to create you know, apps that create new ways to engage with their audiences around particular campaigns or so on, I would still say think really, really carefully about whether you really want to do DIY on that. But for the other 99% of organizations out there, again, to me, it's a waste of resources. I just don't see, again, from a business value point of view, I really very, very rarely see that there's a serious case to be made for doing DIY.
Yeah, and just to add to one of the examples you just gave, you know, one of the recent new customers of Software AG is now Google, who are probably well known for building everything themselves. But you know, in terms of these use cases where companies like that still shouldn't be thinking about building it themselves. In the case of Google, that was B2B integration, just supplier integration, where I think it does make a lot of sense just to use, you know, one of the offers that's out in the market. Obviously, they would not approach Software AG to help, you know, optimize their search algorithm or their core advertisement systems, but for sort of these adjacent or cornerstone or sort of common horizontal use cases, there's probably good reasons for just looking what's out in the market and not building it yourself. I fully agree with that. Now, finally, you know, I don't want to drag this interview out too long, but one final question that you probably get asked every single time when you're in a conversation with your clients is, so what's your advice? You know, what are the things that you know, businesses today, organizations today, should look out for when, you know, deciding on a way forward, and how to assess which strategy, which approach is the right one for them? Do you have any insights there to share? Yeah, I do. And of course, we're a bit constrained because this is the kind of thing that might typically take a, you know, a half day or a full day workshop. But I can obviously hit some of the key points. And really, I'll try and focus on the stuff that may not be immediately obvious. You know, the immediately obvious stuff, we've already touched on many of those points around, you know, I think it's really important to see, to look for platforms that have a hosted option and to start out there. I think that's very important to have in your mind. To platforms that do have an understanding of tasks and cases and work and how that's managed. And have that native in the platform, that are cross-platform in terms of how they deliver an experience, and that do allow you to measure. Those are the four kind of cornerstone technical pieces. But you know what, there's other really important pieces here too. And one of them is around, is looking at the broader context of how innovation programs work. So, you know, typically speaking, when you talk to organizations who do this well, they have teams that build prototypes, and you know, they take great ideas from their partnerships and their collaborations. They build prototypes, and then if there's a clear understanding that there's an opportunity to go further, then they have some kind of, they might call it a hardening capability or an industrialization team, or you know, something else like that, where essentially they need to take that innovation and they need to then bulletproof it and to really introduce it as a kind of as a key operational piece in the organization.
And at that point, it's really important that you have tools and a platform and a provider who can enable you to build that bridge. So you're not creating islands of things that just sit by themselves, but you're creating things that can work in a broader kind of enterprise scale context, where you're able to integrate effectively, you're able to secure effectively, you're able to create those bridges. Yeah. So that's I think that's really, really important, and it's also really important that again, looking at that bridging, you're able to work with a partner who really understands some of those kind of broad enterprise-wide concerns, the architectural concerns. So, because when you do want to take things more operational, if you like, it's really important to be working with a partner that actually really understands that perspective and can help you pull that all together from an organizational perspective as much as anything else. So, you know, people who really understand the architecture implications, for example, of doing that bridging work. So those are the things that are maybe less obvious, that are more about the business context. I think those are also really important to consider.
Excellent. All right, so thanks for sharing these insights, Neil. I think this is as far as we want to go today. So, Will, are you on the line still?
I'm on the line. We do not have any questions at this time.
Okay, perfect. Well, in that case, I'll just say we're going to wrap this up right here. So thanks again, Neil, for your contributions here today. For people on the line here, I strongly recommend to reach out to Neil yourself if you want to have a more in-depth discussion with him about digital transformation, delivering innovation in your organization, and of course for the technology needs to talk to us at Software AG. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.